3, 2, 1. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. It's actually good really afternoon here in Tel Aviv. I'm here with SkepTorr. Everyone might know him already. If you don't, well, you're missing quite a lot. Look up through his older content. SkepTorr, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
So, I guess for the first obvious question, why did you stop making videos?
I stopped making videos because I started repeating myself, and the air conditioner went on again.
He repeats itself too.
Yeah. So I stopped making videos because I felt like I'm repeating myself. There was a plethora of other channels like me. When I started, there were very few. I had original things to say. Now something happens and you got 20 videos all the same. So it felt like just repeating other people's videos. And at the beginning, when I started making videos, I learned a lot from a lot of other videos that I watched, and I read about things. And once I stopped learning more and like less and less, I felt like I have nothing original to say. And I don't know, my life changed. I used to be separated, and then we went back together, and less time.
Yeah, circumstances change.
All of these factors all together, I guess I got tired a bit from doing videos.
Maybe one day you'll find a way to reinvent yourself. I mean, I started going into politics as anti-socialism, then I went into anti-feminism, and then I started writing about anti-feminism, and then I started a YouTube channel which changed its focus several times over the last 4 years. So I don't know, maybe consider.
Well, the other thing is that it takes a lot of time to make videos if you want to make high quality videos. And now there is a very competitive market with production. And I used to make videos, and I used to invest a lot of hours in them, and I used to have more free time, but it's very hard work. And the last videos I made were took me 1-2 hours max to finish from start to end. Writing scripts, editing audio, and my English sucks, so when I record audio I make a lot of mistakes, not just in speaking but
pronunciation.
Pronunciation, everything. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and I don't have the power for that anymore.
Yeah, it seems that this is true.
Enthusiasm of the beginner is different.
It is true, the part with the work. I mean, most people don't realize just how difficult it is to work, to make any videos, really. I mean, other than even the smaller, simpler ones, like turning on the camera and speaking, setting up the lavaliers, putting up the camera at the right angle, writing the script, then editing, putting the jingle, all of that takes time.
Actually, when you're using camera, it's much easier. I didn't use a camera, I didn't show my face, so I had to find something interesting to show. And sometimes for 20 seconds I used to spend, I don't know, a lot of minutes, maybe half an hour, just selecting the right slides and editing them correctly. If I want something dynamic, it takes a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it does. Alright, then let's go to the first topic that we agreed upon, in the sense that most people know you for your anti-feminism videos.
Right.
But I'm less interested in that for now. I'm more interested in the other important stuff, since we're in Israel. Walk me and walk my audience through the Israel-Palestine question.
That's a big topic.
Oh, it is, but we have a decent amount of time available.
Okay, so yeah, we have an air conditioner here. It's starting on and off. So where to begin? Maybe you can ask directly for an entry point that you're interested in, and I can go
start from
there.
1948.
1948. Okay, so that's the time when Israel was created. What happened is, well, you need to understand a lot of history to understand why and everything happened in 48. So Jews used to be immigrants to Palestine. Palestine, or mandatory Palestina, is the area of Syria, Israel, Jordan, and basically that's it. And the Brits ruled here after World War I, and Jews just came in pouring as immigrants to the area, to Palestine. Same as a lot of Arabs came in from Egypt, from Saudi into Palestine, and they were considered Palestinian. They had a Palestinian passport. So after World War II, or even before that, the Brits didn't want to stay here. They wanted to divide the area to nations. So they decided to give the east, from the River Jordan, the East Bank, to the Hashemites, and that became the
Hashemite kingdom.
The Hashemite kingdom of Jordan.
Yes.
They gave
I should have had my kafia with me.
Yeah, they gave Syria to all the tribes over there. The Alawites took power, and in Palestine there were Jews and native Arabs. And they said, okay, the first guy who thought about the partition plan was actually in 36. His name was Peel, the British commissioner. And he said, we'll give the Jews 15% of the area and the Arabs get 80. And they said no. And we said yes. But that didn't come into fruition. But then Second World War came, and the United Nations decided, well, we need to give the Jews some state, and this was culminating into a state. So they said, let's divide the place 50-50, and we said yes, they said no, and they opened war. It was Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi, and a bit of Iraq that pulled into the war, along with the local Palestinians. So the war started one day after the declaration of independence. As a result, our military forces, which were like a few brigades, consolidated into the IDF. We retaliated with war. As a result, a lot of Arabs flew the area. Some of them were convinced by the Jordanians to leave because the Jordanians said, we'll occupy the place, we'll give it back to you. So if a lot of them were convinced by the Jordanians to leave, they lost. We won. The Jordanians took the West Bank. The Egyptians took the Gaza Strip, and we took the rest. And until 67, that was static. We had a few wars with Egypt and Jordan and Syria. But then in 67, we took over the West Bank and the Sinai and the West Bank. The Sinai we gave back in 78. And Gaza we left finally
in 2005
or
6, something like that.
We started pulling out of the West Bank during the Oslo Accords, but that was stopped. So they got what is known to be Area A, with Ramallah, Nablus, and other small cities and villages. And since then, we're stuck in the same situation.
Yeah, because if you're listening to the narrative on the other side, it sounds pretty similar, but it would do one exception, namely that they don't want you here at all.
Yeah, well, the Arabs or Palestinians now that say that the territory was always theirs, it's something which is a very strange argument for me. I mean, what defines if a piece of land is yours or not? I mean, the only real good answer is if you can control it.
Yeah.
That's basically the answer. So the Arabs were not here all the time. Mm-hmm. They got in here during the Muhammad and the all Arab empire situation. And so they came here once upon a time. There were Jews before that here. They were expelled. And Israel and the area in Palestine where Israel is right now was very underpopulated. Mm-hmm. Actually, there were so few people here in the area that you can squeeze them in one Israeli city right now.
Today,
I mean, if you look at the entire map and there's one small city here, it's not small, but you're like small compared to the entire area, you can squeeze all the people in there right now. That's the amount of people who live there. So there were a few villages scattered here and there, one here, one here, one here, one way, and a few big cities like Jerusalem and Haifa. but in Jerusalem there were many Jews. Jews came in as immigrants to an area controlled by the Ottoman Empire, who gave them citizenship, or by the Brits, who gave them citizenship.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between immigrants who came to the United States, became citizens, and then said, you know, this is my land as well? So the whole argument, it's mine, it's yours, is ridiculous, in my view. It doesn't make any sense, because no one owns land. One can only hold the land by force. That's it.
Yeah, especially if you talk in terms of nations, because then in terms of property,
Exactly.
I've learned throughout the last several days that there are some issues of property with people who've been owning places in Tel Aviv since the Ottoman era, well, of course, generations across the generations, and now there's a bureaucratic clusterfuck with all of those.
Well, there are two things about that. First of all, there was never a Palestinian state that was robbed of its statehood, of its sovereignty. It was, again, the Ottoman Empire. The Brits destroyed the Ottoman Empire. It doesn't exist anymore. So now you have the British mandate. The UN was the owner of the sovereign power in the area. They decided to split the land here 50-50. The Arabs in the Middle East, in Palestine, got Syria, got Jordan, which are much bigger than Israel. And then you got this small sliver, which is divided 50-50 between the Jews and the Arabs. And I know they see it differently, but now it's reality and they have to accept it. I mean, they can keep on fantasizing, but it's not going to happen. Their mistake was that they refused, I think, they made a lot of mistakes in the past. They refused 80% of the area because they were greedy. They refused 50% of the area because they were greedy. They refused the offer given to them twice in the year 2000, 2007 to take over the West Bank because they were greedy. And they keep on making the same mistake. The funny thing is that Mahmoud Abbas, who rejected our offer to take over the West Bank, he made the same mistake that he admitted they did in 47, that they didn't take half of the area. So that's recorded. You can find it. I can send it to you. And the thing is about property, about land ownership, is that they're claiming, for example, second, third, fourth, fifth generation of Palestinians that, let's say, used to live in a village somewhere here in Israel, is that Palestinians are the only nation on the planet which are considered refugees in the next generations. I mean, if you're a refugee from any other country or state or whatever in the world, your children are not refugees. Yeah. And the world helps you become the citizen in the country that you're in. They are citizens in the countries that they are in the West, for example. They're not in Syria because the Syrians kept them specifically, they didn't give them any rights or citizenship. So they can be a citizen of the United States. They can be born in the United States, a citizen of the United States, and still be considered refugees. That's an exception that only Palestinians enjoy.
Why?
I'll get to that in a second. So, at first we had 700,000 refugees. Now it's above 5 million. So if they're saying we want to come back, yeah, 5 million are not coming back. That's never going to happen.
I mean, this country has 8 million population already.
Yeah,
so
it has 8 million, 20% are Arab already. It's Israeli citizens, and 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. If you're going to bring in 5 million more, they're taking over the country, the Jewish state is over. So that's not going to happen as long as we can stop. What was the thing you asked me about?
Why does this exception to Palestinians
okay, I guess what happened was the United Nations felt bad that after the partition plan they didn't manage to get the two states. They formed UNRWA, which is the UN, like helping the Palestinians case,
Which recently was defunded by the Trump administration.
Which recently was defunded by the Trump administration. They was supposed to. They had the provision for 5 years since '48, and after 5 years, they was supposed to cease to exist.
It's been many 5 years since.
Yeah,
then.
they are. Yeah, 70 years later, they are still here. They are bigger. They want to stay alive because they get money. They employ hundreds, tens of thousands of Palestinians. They have teachers, they have institutes. They don't want this thing to end because it's like
the purpose of bureaucracy is to perpetuate bureaucracy.
Exactly.
There you go.
So they create more and more Palestinians refugees. They don't help them get citizenship in Syria. They don't help them get citizenships or good jobs in Jordan, where most of the refugees are. A lot of the refugees are right now in Gaza or the West Bank, which is supposed to be a part of the Palestinian land. And they are still considered refugees, which is kind of funny.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's like you're moving from New York to New Jersey,
and you're
considered the refugee of New York. Yeah. So it's a bit funny. So yeah, they get a lot of exceptions. They get a lot of, and you need to understand that the UN is now, it has a lot of more. Sorry for my bad English this late at night. Consists of much more Arab states than it used to be. In the time when Israel was conceived, there was like 33 states in the United Nations, almost all of them Western countries or from Europe. And now it's a lot of Arab countries. Then they have their all of Africa. They have their different objectives and
different interests for sure.
And they corrupted the UN. And you can see countries like Saudi Arabia in
Chairing
the UN
Human Rights Council,
and you understand.
Yeah, that's kind of a big joke.
Europe became much more leftist, much more progressive. And the Palestinian cause was like they put it on a pedestal. I mean, they're not interested in human rights violations or, bad stuff that happens in the world everywhere. They're very, very focused on the Israeli-Palestinian situation. They were very happy when we started talking with Palestinians in '93, and they were stupid enough to believe that things can work out. We were dumb enough to believe that things can work out. But Israelis, after many years of bloodshed, realized that, wait, we were wrong.
This ain't gonna work out.
This is not going to work out as long as the Palestinians are not willing to accept a country next to a country without violence. And that's the problem. They never really believed in the two-state solution. They don't want it. You can see this in the way they bring up their kids, in the school books, in their television. Everywhere you look, you see one message. All the land is ours. This is just temporary. When Arafat started talking with Yitzhak Rabin, our prime minister in the 90s, he regarded the Oslo peace agreements as, what was the name of the city? What was the name of the city from Muhammad, from the Quran? No. No. There was this city that Muhammad made a peace agreement with.
Oh, yeah.
But he said this is temporary.
It's a situation like there where...
Exactly, yeah. It's just temporary. The moment we can overtake them, we'll overtake them. And every time Arafat spoke to his people, he reminded them of that city. And every time he spoke to Europeans, he said, yeah, we're going to do the two-state solution. And the Europeans are very naive and gullible, and they think that Middle Eastern culture is exactly like European culture.
Yeah, it's basically European culture, but with shawarma.
Yeah, the basic premise that they don't understand is that we have different values, or Middle Eastern culture has different values. Europeans value life and liberty above all, individualism, human rights. They value honor and death more than they value life and human rights.
Yeah.
This is the basic flaw in the understanding that they value the land and their honor more than their life. So they are willing to suffer as much as needed, and they will not yield until they have a major cultural change and a change in their most basic perception. a shaheed, a martyr, is the holiest thing that they can think of. And that's bad when you say that to a 3-year-old kid.
Yeah, especially
pumping it into his brain from age
throughout his life, his or her life.
You'll be a soldier, you'll die for our country, that's your purpose. You don't see any other option, like coexistence. That's not in your frame of thinking. That's what we understood, and what I understood personally after the Second Intifada. And a lot of Israelis that shifted from the left to the right because of that. The Europeans, they live in a bubble.
Yeah, since you mentioned Europeans, walk me a little bit through the European insanity. Now, I know quite a lot about it.
I should explain that to you.
But most of my audience refuses to believe me. They're like, come on, we can't be really that fucked up. And I'm like, yes, we are.
Well, the thing is,
well, not only Europeans, obviously. I mean, for instance, Romania has been particularly pro-Israel, but, you know, Sweden, for instance.
Okay,
I'm
so
like,
the Western,
wow.
The Western countries, not the Eastern European countries, which understand us better, because when you live in harsh situations like under communism, and you understand life is harsh and you have to make harsh decisions, then you
and that civilization needs to be maintained rather than...
your frame of thinking can absorb what we are living through. But when you're living all your life with flowers, just a second, when you're living all your life with love and let's make peace and hug each other and everything is cool and fine,
not war,
and you don't understand that life can be harsh,
and that
reality
most people
can be very cruel, people can be very mean, and there are different cultures that you cannot just simply talk to and come to terms with. They think differently from you. It's like speaking to an alien. They don't get that in their rudimentary understanding of life. They think that we can still live here all in peace. Once we just get the 2 states, that's it. They'll get a state, we'll get a state, everything will calm down. It won't. They don't get that because they never had to go through this experience in life. It's something that it's like if you grow up in a very bad neighborhood and you get roughed up and you get bullied, but then you get some character in you as well. You can stand up to bullies. When you've never been bullied in your life, and you see a bully, you can rationalize it with them, and you can't.
Yeah, that's one of the things that got me into a lot of trouble on YouTube, because I made a video essentially saying that, you know, bullying builds character. It's maybe all of the anti-bullying programs in schools should be toned down a little bit and only apply to, I don't know, physical injury.
That's how you get snowflakes, and they become bullies.
There you go. Yeah, but that's the thing. Where did the snowflakes learn from to become bullies? I mean, I guess it's part of human nature, because otherwise...
It is. Eventually, well, you know, it happens. Fuck it, I'll smoke.
Yeah. All right. But the thing is that, and you're right about the Eastern Europeans being a little bit more understanding, because, you know, we had our Eastern bully too. Here it's true, the same thing, Eastern bully. We had our Eastern bully in Russia. Here, Eastern bullies, Arabs who don't really don't like the Jews being here. But still, I mean, in comparison with
strange. Why would they care?
In comparison with the 50s and 60s, things have gotten slightly better. Security is much better in this country than it used to be, for sure. Now there's even a somewhat friendly border crossing between here and Jordan, and the other way around. It's more bureaucratic on the Jordanian side, actually, than on the Israeli side. I'll make a separate video about that crossing, because most of what you read on the internet about it is fake news. Oh, yeah. No, seriously, it is fake news. I mean, if you are to believe the travel websites, it's going to cost you $300 to cross that border. It can actually be done in under 50, trust me. you just need to Jew them a little bit at the border. Now, but in all seriousness, things have gotten better, and there is room
for peace with neighboring countries. They don't have any interest of going into war with us.
Yeah,
they come to terms with us. Even Saudi has come to terms with us.
Yes, most recently I have seen that there's going to be a flight from here to New Delhi. It's going to be much shorter and much cheaper than before, because now they can fly over Saudi Arabia, which was unimaginable 3 years ago. See, this is why Trump is good. But yeah, I mean, there is room for optimism.
Yeah, but when it's concerning the Palestinians, and as long as they get, the problem is, as long as they get so much
funding from abroad,
from the
and keeping the radicalism
European
alive.
left.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't have any interest of moving forward.
Yeah. The incentives
They
are just.
enjoy, the first video I made on YouTube was they don't have an incentive because they lose all their funding, and they don't have the infrastructure for a state. They would be be taken over like in Syria or Iraq by militant groups, like exactly what happened in Gaza. Taken over by Hamas, a terrorist organization. They're keeping the military rule of law, and they are very fascistic to their own people.
Oh yeah. I mean, talking about Arabs being repressed, a trip to the Gaza Strip would show you quite a lot about Arabs being repressed, and there's no Israeli presence there, by the way.
No. Gaza used to be more secular. The border to Gaza used to be open between Israel and Gaza. They used to just come in cars here every day. We used to go there to shop. Now it's impossible to go there. It's a war zone. And they are oppressing them. They have Sharia law, very oppressive Sharia law over there. They are terrorizing their own people. So that would happen like this. That's why the Palestinian Authority wants us there for security reasons. They cooperate with our security forces, capturing terrorists, and they allow us in because we are keeping the government stable.
Yeah, so I guess in the end they don't want a two-state solution either, if they're willing to let the idea.
No, they want a one-state solution and eventually take over. They want to get citizenship, to vote, and to take over by numbers. That's what they want. That's why the two-state solution, with the current Palestinian line of thinking and culture, is practically impossible. And people can still keep talking about that. It won't happen.
Yeah. Well,
not because of us, not because of the Europeans. I guess
this is not a good moment to say that I would prefer a one-state solution, give the whole Middle East to the Jews because they're going to run it better. But anyway, in a more serious line of thought, the trend of the European left hasn't gotten better. So while the situation here has actually improved, little by little, and probably not towards a two-state solution as you explained, but still things are better now than they used to be, for sure, in many ways, except the Gaza Strip, which has gotten worse. But the situation in the European left is nowhere near as good as it was 15 years ago. I mean, I could not imagine during the time of Tony Blair, for instance, to see on a Labour Party convention in the United Kingdom
someone like Corbyn, or
Corbyn's latest convention. I don't know if you've seen the pictures. There is no British flag,
all Palestinian
and
flags.
all
It looks like a PLO convention.
Yeah, it looks like a PLO convention. I mean, I would have been okay if on the podium stood Mahmoud Abbas, and I'm like, okay, fine.
Oh, one flag, that's fine.
But
for solidarity reason.
Yeah, but why? That's the kind of the stream of leftism that I can't understand. I've spent most of my life studying leftism, both through direct experience and also, of course, through books and whatever. I've read all the leftist thinkers, and I know how they form thought. But this particular strain that I prefer to call Northwestern European leftism, because, Spain is Western European too, but the Spanish left, the Partido Socialista Obrero Español, they're full feminist, full cultural Marxist, whatever, but they're not so much into this pro-Arab, pro-Islam thing. But the Northwestern Europeans, Sweden in particular, the United Kingdom, Ireland as well, I don't understand that stream of leftism, and maybe you can help me. That
stream of leftism came from the universities, from campuses. Surely they exacerbated the situation. There was a post that I saw on Facebook on Michigan University. There's a mandatory class that you need to take where you see on the big screen, you see Hitler and Netanyahu next to each other, and they written genocidal. They committed genocide, both of them, and that's a mandatory class in the University of Michigan. There was an article about this in Israeli media. I don't know if on European media, maybe on Fox News, maybe. I don't know.
I didn't see it, so
yeah, I'll send you you can find it. But yeah, the universities are extremely left, very extreme left, and they propagate those ideas into the next generations. And it took decades, but now they are becoming, you can see the left is becoming more and more progressive. And then you see a backlash from the right? You can see it in Europe, where you see a lot of parties that were right-wing, that were considered extreme, and like no one would vote for them. Suddenly they are like third place, second place. Le Pen, Austria has a right-wing.
AFD in Austria.
Yeah, AFD.
Alternative für Deutschland, Sverige Demokraten in Sweden.
Geert Wilders
in the Netherlands, yes.
the Netherlands, so you see...
Although in fairness, I don't consider Geert Wilders to be extreme. I mean, he's economically centrist and just realistic on the Muslim question.
In Sweden, he is extreme, because most of them are very far left, so everything that is right from there...
To the right of Mao is, you know, far right. I mean, sometimes I'm making the joke, and I'm going to put the meme up right now. It's with the political compass, and the first four corners up on the far left, very authoritarian, and on the far left, that's peace and love, and the rest of it is far right, essentially.
And Nazis, yeah.
Yeah, or Nazis. and I'm like, come on, people. I mean, and what surprises me the most is how many people still buy into that narrative, although in fairness, fewer and fewer. I mean, these kinds of far left narratives have been losing ground finally in Europe, but not fast enough. I mean...
But you can see the divide. You can see it in Europe. You can see it in the United States. I saw a graph that showed by Jonathan Haidt, he tweeted it a few days ago, that the hatred towards the other party, like Republicans, how much they hate the Democratic Party, and and vice versa.
Vice versa. It's twice higher, or three times higher.
It's more than that. It's 5 times higher.
Oh,
in the 90s, it was like 10%. Now it's 50%. So they're going like this.
Yeah, and the amount of hatred keeps on growing on the left, and not so much on the right. Yeah, sure, we on the right have gotten a little bit more radical in our rhetoric and whatnot, and maybe in some of the policies that we propose, but we haven't yet, anyway, become more hateful of leftists. I mean, yeah, sure, I make the helicopters jokes all the time, but, you know...
There's a different... Dennis Prager said that once in a video I watched, and he said, the people on the right think that people on the left are good people but stupid. You know, they don't have the right ideas.
Yeah, or wrong, yes.
Or wrong, or stupid, or whatever. People on the left think the people on the right are evil.
Evil, yes.
Yeah, that's the big difference. They think they are moral, and the right is immoral, while the people on the right didn't see things like this.
Yeah, we think some policies are more moral than others, but you know, essentially, traditionally, at the very least, we didn't look at leftists as fundamentally evil. I do, but most right-wingers don't.
Yeah, but a lot of people now start to think about the left as more and more evil, because of people, like say, because the left became more and more extreme, they are showing more and more evilish tendencies. When you have the Hillary saying basket of deplorables, that's something that you would never hear from a Republican candidate.
The worst that was heard from a Republican candidate was the 48% speech by Mitt Romney, in which he didn't even say bad things. He just said, look, 48% of this country doesn't pay taxes, so of course they don't like a lowering
that
of
doesn't mean that's not him saying you're evil.
Yes,
when you're calling some, you know, half of the or quarter of the nation deplorables,
yes,
something is very wrong, and your ethics are, you know,
in a whole different ball game of fucked up.
Yeah. So now the right looks at the left, or even the center looks at the extreme left, like the progressives and the communists, Antifa. So yeah, they are hateful, they are evil, they are hateful, and we don't buy into this. We are moral.
Walk me a little bit through the Israeli left, because, and this is the question that I asked to almost every guest that I had while here in Israel. The first thing that I saw when I was, because I traveled by land, I crossed the border at the Allenby Bridge, and then from there I took a cab to downtown Jerusalem, and then from there I took the bus to get to Tel Aviv. And the first thing I saw when I was entering Tel Aviv was a big green building that said private property is organized theft. And then 1 or 2 minutes later by bus, another big building painted with communist propaganda. Why are there so many commies here? And are the leftists here...
Too many commies, yeah.
Or at least they're very vocal, for sure.
Yeah.
But why are the leftists... what is the difference, if any, between the leftists here and the leftists in Europe?
Okay. The leftists that are... Okay, so we have the same spectrum, but it's shifted. So what is considered centrists here someone who's considered a centrist here would be considered right, maybe even a little bit far right in Europe.
I would be far right even by this standards country, but so this country standard.
But I mean, it's like we have like a whole different spectrum, like it's all completely shifted. We do have progressives here. We do have the crazy nut job progressives that the percentages are much lower here than there are because of the hard situation that we are living in here. The fact that we have gone through so many wars, the fact that we have gone through 2 intifadas, the fact that we have to deal with Palestinians and with Gaza and with missiles flying into Israel. We don't have a lot of progressives here. I think they are like something like 10% of the population, maybe even less, and they are, some of them are moderate progressives, so they are not completely crazy. They're the crazy ones. There are very few of those. We have Arab Communist Party here in Israel, but most of the voters are Arab because it's an Arab party, not because Israeli Jews are voting for them. If you look at, for example, the Labour Party here, which is considered left, not extreme left, but left, they are still calling themselves Zionists. They are still saying that this is the state for the Jews, something that in the left or the Labour in the UK would be considered a racist,
a fascist,
far wing, blah blah blah. So when I'm saying we are shifted, we are truly shifted here.
Yeah, so in a way, Israel is behind Europe by about 15 years. This is a point I always make in the Romanian language podcasts. 15 years ago, and I remember this clearly because I was in Germany at the time, there was a discussion about immigration. It was an election nearby, I think it was local elections or whatever, and they were discussing immigration, and I was watching a debate amongst the candidates of the SPD, which is the Social Democrat, the main left-wing party in Germany. And in 2002-2003, they were discussing immigration in terms that I would consider very moderate. And again, I'm on the far right on the issue of immigration, but they were discussing terms in terms of moderation, in the sense that, look, you gotta have borders. The borders are there for a reason. Yes, maybe they should be a little bit more open than the status quo in 2003 Germany, but we still have to know everyone who got in. Maybe we should streamline the process of getting a residence permit. Maybe we should. So, you know, they were still pro-immigration, but pro-immigration, I guess, in a more rational sense. Nowadays, if I were to go to Germany and hold a lecture word for word for what the policy of the Social Democratic Party in Germany was 15 years ago, I would be probably go to jail for hate speech.
Probably, yeah.
Or at the very least get a warning.
Yeah. They would consider you far right. That's funny because our Labour Party, which is left-wing, if you listen to the leaders like Golda Meir in the 70s, she has a similar rhetoric to what Netanyahu is having right now, or even right to Netanyahu.
On immigration, for sure.
Even on making peace with Arabs. She said,
that's what I meant.
I don't have a problem making peace with Arabs, but they don't want to make peace with us. And she coined the phrase, we'll have peace with the Palestinians.
When they will love their children more than they hate Jews.
Ours, yeah. That would never fly in the Labour Party of today. They would never say anything like that. That would be considered
So they're walking
hateful.
On the same path, just 10 or 15 years behind Europe.
Our left became more leftist in recent years. In the last 10, 15 years, they veered left. Our right-wing, we got more right-wing parties right now, and the Israeli votes shifted to the right after the second Intifada and after Gaza. We were more left-leaning back then, before that.
So basically the Israeli left is following the same path that
only it's becoming smaller and smaller, not bigger and bigger.
I see, yeah. So they're losing votes much faster than they do in Europe.
Yeah. The centrist parties, we have parties which are trying to stay centrist and saying, let's have a two-state solution. They're more concerned about internal issues. They get a lot of votes because people don't like the corruption in the Likud party or too far right, which is the religious Zionist agenda, which most Israelis don't don't agree with. Like, I mean, like a party that says, you know, all the land is ours, including the West Bank. Some even go as far as say including Jordan, because the Bible said so. Most
that's
Israelis
a bit crazy.
Don't follow that.
That's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
But walk me through a little bit on this. On this religious kind of thing, because one of the guests, the Yoni, the chap from the Likud liberals, he mentioned something about there's still being lagging issues on the issue of separation of the synagogue and the state, basically. I mean, the religious affairs haven't been properly separated from secular affairs. How much of that is really a problem, and how much of it is just written words somewhere that nobody really abides by?
If I'm comparing us to, for example, the US, they are very concerned about, you know, religious laws. They separated church from state. We don't have this separation. We have a rabbinic court system here that revolves around kosher issues, revolves around marriage issues, and we suffer from that as the secular community here, which is the majority here, suffers from that. How much does it affect on our daily lives? You get used to it. It's not, frankly, it's not that bad. If you live in Tel Aviv, you don't really feel it. You feel it if you get divorced, and there are some laws that can fuck you up. For example, you cannot get a divorce in a regular court. You have to get it in a rabbinic court, and
that's terrible.
It can become complex and bad, and you can get fucked by that. But other than that, the kosher thing, you can buy non-kosher food in Tel Aviv practically everywhere.
I noticed that. Not so much in Haifa, though. But,
you can get it in Haifa. You just need to go to the right place.
There you go.
Yeah, to the right places. The central city, no problem. There are cities or villages that are mostly religious, so they are more strict over there. But generally speaking, if you're secular and you live in Israel, you don't experience it in everyday life. You don't care as much.
Yeah, now that you mentioned the divorce and rabbinic courts, maybe we could transition to the other topic, which is non-feminism from our point of view, or the gynocentrist feminist assault on normal people by feminists in conjunction with the rabbi. I mean, one of the main points of the men's rights movement for many years was that, look, there is fuck-ups from the quote-unquote right. I mean, there are fuck-ups that predate feminism in many ways. But until we get to that, walk me through the feminist movement in Israel. And the feminist policies.
Okay.
How many?
So we have women's organizations, two of them funded by the government. The rest are private and small.
Which are those funded by the government?
They are called Vitzo and Naamat. They do a lot of community service, like schools and kindergartens.
Indoctrinate them while they're young.
Yeah, it's not as bad as you think. They do a lot of good work as well. They help like handicapped people. They became more feminized in recent decades. It wasn't used to be like that. The social services became more, the feminist theories permeated into laws, permeated into policies. Under the radar, no one really knows about this here except the ones who actually
take the time to read and look into it.
Take time. The reason Israelis don't know about this as much as, let's say, don't have knowledge of this is because we didn't have a lot of progressive governments. And once you have a progressive government,
then all of those things start to matter.
Then you see that on a big scale, and you feel it on a big scale in a lot of laws, legislation, and policies. When it's on a small fire, you can make small increments, and no one will even notice, and no one even sees that. So it's very under the radar for a lot of Israelis. They don't understand that until they get a divorce, or lately until YouTube became more popular, the internet became more popular, and the next generation after me, people in their 20s, they start noticing that more and more. They become aware.
They got woke on the F question.
Yeah, gynocentrism is something that I'm like too knowledgeable to know that gynocentrism exists in the right as well. It even exists in religion. Although religion,
obviously,
our religion has more patriarchal attributes to it
than Christianity,
compared to, or even, secular, culture here. So they have their own kind of gynocentrism, and they have their own kind of patriarchy in their belief system. Women are not allowed to do this or that, or they have a lot of restrictions on one hand. On the other hand, when you go to divorce court, it's very gynocentric. I mean, for example, if you want to get a divorce, both sides must agree. If one side doesn't want to agree to a divorce, you won't get a divorce. So we have a word for this in Hebrew, and I don't know how to translate it into English, but you are in a state of like limbo. And you cannot remarry. I think men can remarry, women cannot. But the funny thing is, the reason they want they pressure men more. So a man that doesn't give a divorce to his wife is sanctioned financially. He can go to jail. They can take his passport. They can take his driver's license. They can put him in jail. They can do all sorts of stuff to him. They don't do anything to women. They protect women in that way. If a woman doesn't want to give a divorce to the husband needs to pay her alimony. And this is crazy because she doesn't give him a divorce. She holds all the cards and she gets paid for that.
So it creates a perpetual incentive for women to never agree to a divorce.
Exactly. They'll stop getting the money.
Yeah.
And they
see, this is cultural proximity speaking, because this is something that I've seen in Sharia law as well.
Yeah. And this is a gynocentric concept.
Of course it is. People don't realize just how gynocentric Islam can be as well. I mean, on matters of divorce, it can be pretty bad.
Yeah.
And is there any chance, I wouldn't dare to say hope, but is there any possibility of reforming this?
I don't see it in the near or mid future.
During your lifetime?
Not plausible. Religion has a tendency to grow faster than secularism.
Yeah, but you just said that.
We had our good times. Eventually, nations become, I think, it goes like this, the religion goes down, it will go back up.
It will start going back up.
Yeah. They have more kids, they're much more influential, and the rabbinic institute in Israel is so strong and so corrupt, it will never come down. The problem is in our voting system, mainly, and that is we need to have a coalition and because we don't have enough votes for this party or that party to become for the
clear
long
majority,
term, and for the long term. I'm not just saying for 1 or 2 or 3 terms. If they are certain that they will have a secular majority and hold the government for, 50 years, they might do that eventually. But the religious parties, the Hasidic Haredi, which is like the Orthodox with the black beards and everything.
The guys that put themselves in bags if they are sitting next to a woman in a plane.
They know what to do, but because what they want is the Rabbinic Institute. They want money to give to their schools where they teach only religion.
What, you mean the rabbis want shekels? I couldn't believe that either.
They're all about the money, and so they are great coalition partners. They will vote for anything the government wants to vote, except on religious issues.
And as long as the government leaves their religion
pays
alone.
the check.
Yeah.
And that perpetuates their
the state within the state.
There is a thing in gaming theory. There is a famous Israeli professor that wrote a lot of books about gaming theory, and he was game theory, and he was the prodigy of Uman, who won a Nobel Prize, another Jewish Israeli, about game theory. and he said that you have two parties, each holds 49% of the votes, and one party which holds 2% of the votes. Which party is the strongest one?
The one with 2%?
The one with 2%, and that's the situation here since the 70s. So that's why we won't get rid of the Rabbinic Institute.
No, because one of the stereotypes on certain sections of political thought, particularly the anti-Semitic ones, is that, well, how come there is no feminism in Israel? But I know that there is.
There are,
and they even have the universities already.
You have it in the universities. You have the march. What do you call it?
The Women's March or the March 8th?
No, you have the Women's March, but we also have the slut walks.
Oh, the slut. Oh, Jesus
walks,
Christ!
Usually by young women, or crazy elderly women with cats.
Yeah, who still think they can be sluts at 50.
Yeah.
Smelling like cat piss.
Yeah, because a lot of women who are feminists, when they're young, they stop becoming feminists once they get a family and settle down and become smarter, wiser because of life. Yeah.
As it turns out, once you get a patriarch in your bedroom, you start getting wiser. See, semen makes you wiser.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do have feminism here. It's not as outspoken as in other Sweden, because our governments are much more moderate from my perspective, and moderate or right-leaning, and so these voices are not really the strongest one. If you go to the left-wing parties in Israel, the more progressive parties, you'll hear everything that is being said in Swedish, maybe not Swedish, because they are completely nuts. I mean, they won't vote for removing the snowplowers from the main cities. We don't get snow here, but but you get the idea.
I heard that there's this mythology that sometimes it snows in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, it does snow almost every year.
Yeah.
And in the Golan Heights.
Well, in the Golan Heights makes sense, but in Jerusalem, I mean, what can it be? 10 centimeters, maybe?
Yeah, it's not a lot of snow, but when it happens, we just drive there and
let's see some snow. It's really warm in this country. I mean, seriously, it's October the 9th as we tape this. And it's still like 25, 26 degrees Celsius, very close to midnight.
Well, it's a desert country with a desert climate and a Mediterranean climate on the middle of the country north. Yeah.
In Sweden, they don't vote for the snowplows because it helps women, even though
they ship them to the urban areas.
And they clean the sidewalks first because
for the women's.
Yeah, because women tend to walk more. But what they didn't realize is that women walk towards the bus stop. And the bus can't get there if you clean up the sidewalk first.
And all the city got, traffic. And everything went to a halt.
Up until 2016, when this insanity started in Stockholm, I always believed that the Bucharest snow plowing service was the worst in Europe. And here comes Stockholm and shows me that no. The chaps in Bucharest, they're pretty nice.
They realized they made a mistake. It took them just 1 month. To realize not 1 day, but 1 month.
1 month, yeah. But then again, it got re-implemented in Göteborg. I mean, it's no longer. It's sort of suspended in Stockholm, but it's in the other big city of Sweden. It is still in place.
Sweden.
Yeah, Sweden. Yes.
The bird and the canary.
I remember. This is one of the things that I always remember from one of your videos. That many individuals have noticed that the Swedish leadership tends to be pretty anti-Israel. But then you said, look, they're treating Israel the same way they treat their own country. So what more can we ask from them than to treat us like their own? And they treat their own pretty badly, so why would they treat Israel any better?
Well, they have like a very high moral standard for themselves and to Israelis. They don't apply the same moral requirements or standards to Palestinians. And there was this one woman called Caroline Glick. I saw her in a panel with a Swedish man, and he said, well, we expect more from Israel. And she said, you don't expect more from us. You have a single standard for Israel. You have one standard for the rest of the world, maybe another standard for Arabs, because how do you say it?
They're people of color?
No, the bigotry of low expectations.
Bigotry of low expectations.
And you have a single standard which is above all standards for Israel.
Now, in all fairness, I don't want to defend the Swedish left. I believe they should all be helicoptered, but in all fairness, most Swedes, even some of them who consider them on the right, most Swedes do have this I don't know if it's necessarily racist, but it's definitely xenophobic way of looking at things. For instance, if I go to Sweden and, I don't know, beat someone up on the street, I'll definitely go to jail. If an Arab goes to Sweden and does exactly the same thing, he might not even get a criminal record.
Yeah, the bigotry of low expectations, but internal politics as well. They are afraid of...
You're right, but they legitimately do have different standards. They say, well, okay, well, Eastern Europeans and Israelis, they're pretty much like us, so they apply one standard. But then if it's an African or an Arab or...
They don't know better.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, they don't know better. That's how they function in their daily lives.
I think they're also afraid of internal backlash. I mean, if they start asking the local immigrants to behave like Swedes, to behave like Westerners, then they'll get hell on their hands, and they want to avoid it. It's like the same reason why the UK police, the English police, did not investigate the Rotherham rape gangs. Or the
out of fear of being called racist.
Exactly.
Although in fairness, in the United Kingdom,
as well.
Although in fairness, in the United Kingdom, they have another problem. It's called common purpose, which is pretty much a left-wing Freemasonry, which literally trains bureaucrats to infiltrate into bureaucracy and push progressive policy. Unelected bureaucrats, essentially. And the police force is full of them. The town halls and the council and the local council actually has power in the United Kingdom. Unlike here, where I learned last night that the mayor of this city doesn't even have much power.
Well, but that's an unstable equilibrium. Eventually, it would have to tumble down. I mean, you cannot hold that forever.
Yeah, it is not sustainable, but it has been around for so long that probably the left is now thinking, well, there's nothing that can take us down.
But imagine if Corbyn wins and starts implementing crazy policies, even crazier than they have today, like the hate speech laws that they have in the UK today, where you get arrested for a mean tweet or just tweeting or putting the word nigger on Instagram, which happened. And the woman got, you need to change the button?
Go ahead.
Okay. The woman got a sentence and trial, then found guilty and had to serve community service, and she was in a curfew and a fine. She could even go to jail. But I guess the judge was lenient. I mean, if Corbyn goes that way, that direction, eventually it would become even worse and worse, and the backlash will come.
Are you sure about that backlash? Because it seems to me, and I hope I will be proven wrong on this, but it seems to me that most Brits are pretty content with the current status quo.
They're
even with
not
crazy
affected enough. Once they feel the effect more and more.
So you're on the same opinion as me. Things have to go significantly worse until enough people figure it. I guess that makes sense. I mean, we in Romania rebelled only after we started literally
70
starving.
years of living well, 3 generations of people becoming more and more docile and nonchalant about stuff like that. Yeah, you need something big for them to shift. But again, you can see the right taking over Italy, Austria, and slowly into Western countries.
Of course, most of Eastern Europe. In Sweden now, the so-called far right is the second biggest party. So yeah, things are progressing. But
this guy.
But they're not progressing fast enough, I would say. Okay, what is the state of, probably one of the last questions, what is the state of free speech in this country?
We can pretty much say everything. You won't get arrested.
So if I say nigger on this street, nothing's going to happen,
You can
right?
say kill the Arabs.
Okay.
In the street, no one will do anything. I mean, the Arabs can say kill the Jews. Nothing will happen. The only things that you cannot say is you can slander people or say, but then you'll get a civil court case.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's illegal.
Libel and slander.
Yeah.
But it's only illegal if the other one files lawsuit and proves that there is
exactly. They'll pay whatever the civil courts tells them to pay. And of course, inciting to violence directly. That's a criminal offense.
Yeah, but that makes sense. But I'm thinking about, are there anything even remotely resembling speech codes? Like, for instance, I can't say that, look, I would prefer my neighborhood without Negroes. Would that be
You can write a post on Facebook You can say it on national television. No problem. No problem.
I see. Walk me a little bit through some of the, and I'll tell you what the lies, what I think are lies, essentially, of what I have. And I have been through almost all of Israel. For instance, one of the things that I keep on hearing from, especially from the left, but also from some of the people who consider themselves to be on the right, and I beg to differ. For instance, the notion that Israel is an apartheid state. It doesn't seem to me, you know, the neighborhood I've been living for the last week.
That's a very complex...
By the way, I've been living in a neighborhood that is 80% black.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a weird apartheid place, I would say.
And you live 5 minutes walk from a mostly Arab city, which is inside Tel Aviv.
Yes.
See, the problem with this argument, it's very shady, it's very murky, it's very nebulous.
Yeah, because whenever I hear this argument, I ask people, please tell me your definition of apartheid.
Exactly. That's the first problem.
Because if you function by the South African definition, you know, the inventors of the word apartheid.
So,
quite far.
If you're an Israeli citizen, 20% of them are Arabs. They enjoy all the human rights, the individual rights that Israelis have. They have laws protecting them from discrimination because of there is laws protecting people for discrimination against gender, ethnicity. So if an Arab goes to a restaurant and they say, we're not going to serve you food because you're an Arab, they will sue them, they will win. It happened. They can vote for the government, they can be elected for the government. There were Arab ministers, Supreme Court judges, army officers, colonels in the army who are not Jewish. I've
seen several ideas for Arabs, so yeah, I don't think it's really that uncommon.
The Arabs have 15% or almost 20% of the seats in the Knesset. Mm-hmm. If they would be the majority, they would be elected for the government. They would we'll have an Arab prime minister. Mm-hmm. To call that an apartheid state is crazy talk. What they do refer to the apartheid state is there is one area. After we started the peace agreements with the Palestinians, the West Bank is occupied territories. It's not a part of Israel. They don't have Israeli citizenship. Mm-hmm. They do have a Palestinian citizenship. They have a Palestinian passport under the UN recognized Palestinian state. Mm-hmm. There are 3 areas, A, B, and C. A is completely controlled by the Palestinians. A is completely controlled by the Palestinians. B is joint security controlled by Israel and the Palestinian Authority.
And C is basically Israeli
Area
in everything but name only.
By Israel, although the Palestinians over there do get citizenship from the Palestinian Authority, but they are under Israeli control. It's an area under dispute until we finish the peace process. That was the agreement. It constitutes 3% of all the Palestinians. I mean, we are controlling 3% of all the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And because they are in area under dispute, and we have not finished the discussion, will they be a part of Palestine? Because Israel came and said, listen, you know what? We'll take Area C. We'll take all the Palestinians in Area C, we'll give them citizenship and full rights. You know why we want to do that? Mm-hmm. Because it's only 80,000 Palestinians. It doesn't change a damn thing. Mm-hmm. We have 1.5 million Arabs here. 80,000 more would not change a thing. Mm-hmm. Of course, they don't want to agree to that. So they are still in limbo. And because they don't have the votes to the right to vote or an Israeli citizenship, but they're under Israeli control, temporarily.
Allegedly.
Yeah? That's why they call it apartheid. But go ahead, we'll take you, go back, go there, take you, become citizens of Palestine, whatever. You choose. They don't want to go either way. So they are maintaining the situation that we want to stop, and they call it apartheid. Because there's a wall going through, and this wall is like a few kilometers long. The rest of it is just a chain link fence. That separates the border between the areas A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. And the reason we had to put I don't know, 10 feet or even more higher.
It's about 4 meters high.
4 meter concrete walls.
I've seen it, yeah.
It's just because there's a village here, there's a road here, and they used to shoot at cars. So we had to erect the walls. I mean, they created the situation.
Yeah, I'm sorry for not allowing you to shoot at my roads.
Exactly.
My
the wall was
deepest...
not always there. It came up for a reason, to save lives.
And question, if someone from that village behind the wall wants to cross into Israel, can they do
It's
it?
the long route.
Yeah, but can they do it legally?
In the checkpoint.
Oh, sure. So it's possible.
It's possible.
So it's not complete separation. I mean, you know...
but the guys in the village here and the guys in the village there, they are relatives and they used to walk like this from village to village. Now there's a wall between them and they are saying apartheid just because of that. It's nonsensical.
Yeah, well, I get that it makes their lives inconvenient, but at the end of the day, people being shot at in their own cars is also quite inconvenient, I would say, especially if it ends in fatalities.
There's the myth that we are destroying Palestinian homes to create Israeli settlements.
Settlements, yeah.
Why
please
is
walk
that
me
a
through
myth?
that.
We do destroy Palestinian homes, but very specific homes. If you get a terrorist who came into Israel, blew up, and killed Jews, there's this law here that we tear down their house. Specifically, only one house in the middle of Nablus, so you have all of Nablus, and we destroy one house, and they turn it into we are destroying Palestinian.
That seems like fair to me. You come and blow things
instead.
Up here, I'm gonna blow your shit up.
The lie is that we are building, new Israeli settlements in these, where we destroyed all the homes, which is a complete lie. We are building settlements, which I'm not for, but we are building settlements in places which are vacant. I mean, go to Jerusalem, you'll see a lot of, empty areas, and they just, the religious Jewish nutters, they go with caravans, they just settle there, and after a few years they get a permit or they'll be evacuated.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that not too many Israeli Jews would be keen on living in the middle of Nablus. So that's why it always seemed off to me, this narrative with the settlements in the Palestinian areas. I mean, who in his right mind would even go to live there?
There's one small town called Kiryat Arba. It's right next to I don't know the name. I don't know how to say it in English. Jericho. It's Jericho.
Yeah, Jericho.
Very close to Jericho, and there are like, I don't know, 5-10 families over there, and they are patrolled by Israeli soldiers like this, not to get murdered. But they are the nutters, and we have a few nutters. Yeah, everyone they got their nutters.
Yeah, on our way back from the Golan Heights, there was another town that they even built a university there, a technical university. I don't remember the name of the town. And the same
Carmel?
thing. I think so, yes. And they built it right next to an Arab area, and at first when it was built, it was with lynchings and stuff. The Arabs would lynch everyone else, because it's not only Jewish people who live there, they're also Christians. I saw a church. But nowadays it seems to have gotten a little bit more peaceful.
Well, the area where you have Arab cities near Carmel is actually on the Israeli side. And they are Israeli citizens. Umm-el-Fachem and other cities, Kalkilia, yeah.
So, I guess on a final note, give me an argument on how to, well, it's a very tough question, but how do we make the left to no longer have its capital in Brussels and its heart in Ramallah?
I guess the left will have to destroy itself. There is no, you have to win the hearts and minds of young people. You have to convince them by logic and reason. You need to point out the craziness of the left, and you need to wait until leftist governments and progressive governments, like in Sweden, self-destruct. I don't see any other way. I mean,
it's definitely a long-term project.
It's a change that would be written with blood, I think. Like here in Israel, we became right-wing after more to the right, after we 3 times elected the left-wing government, the Rabin government, the Barak government, and the Olmert government. And we paid with a lot of blood, and we said, fuck it, no more. That's the only way to go.
That's quite terrible, because that
I
would,
know.
because
I wish
that,
it could be the other way and another way. But
because that would mean at least some countries of Europe will have to suffer a little bit.
yeah, but you see the trend that the political spectrum is becoming more and more like divisive, like this.
Yeah.
And if the left rules, eventually it will crumble, and then you'll get, you know, a backlash, and then it will go back to probably to a more moderate, but it will take time, and it will take a huge sacrifice, I guess, in each country, in a different way.
Too bad we can't end in a happy end, but I guess the only happy end here is that we got to meet each other. It's been an honor to meet you, and hopefully I can convince you somehow to start making videos again.
Oh, maybe one day I will.
Maybe one day you will. If not, then maybe 1 or 2 years from now, when I come back to Israel, maybe I can convince you once again to show up on my show. But maybe by then you get good at chess, and and we can have a live stream playing chess together.
I doubt that I will ever be good at chess, because
don't worry, I'm not that good either.
Starting at 43, yeah, it's
well, again, nobody was born a grandmaster. I mean. Many of especially the top 2,000, there are many who started later in life. So, you know, there is room for improvement. And, you know, Kasparov is still kicking ass at what, 80?
I heard he's doing very bad lately.
Yeah, but, you know, he's still very good at chess.
Yeah, compared to...
well, compared to me, definitely. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming. Thanks a lot for all of you who watched. I hope it was at the very least a bit informative. Many thanks to the Austro-Somalia Institute for making some of these things happening. And with all of that being said, I'll see you all soon. Cheers.